This is the Connecticut Water Guy Hour. And now here's your host, Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy.
Hi, I'm Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy. Welcome back to the Connecticut Water Guy Show.
Yes, sir.
We've got Paul here and
Ethan
in the studio.
Yes, sir.
We're going to keep you entertained and give you hopefully a little fun education and some fun factoids you didn't know before. Mm-hmm. To those of you that are tuning in again, thank you for your loyalty. And for those of you who are first-time listeners wondering what in the world is this guy doing talking, we talk about all things water. So we try to have as much difference between episodes. We don't want to repeat ourselves too terribly much here. But I am Paul with Connecticut Advanced Water Systems over in Highland Springs, Virginia, in Richmond. And you can reach us over there by phone at 877-60-WATER or ConnecticutRichmond.com. You can find our YouTube channel, Connecticut Richmond, and now Water Guy Podcast is out there on all platforms.
Yes.
So if you like what you're hearing and you want to hear previous episodes, then please find me and find me and we'll go from there. It's kind of cool because this is our 14th official episode.
Yes, it is.
And I think we're getting some pretty good traction here. So we're the local water expert here for the greater Richmond area, all the way down to the North Carolina border, over and including Williamsburg. So we've got a pretty defined territory that we handle, but I'm part of a dealership that is the largest Connecticut dealership in the world. And we have about 12 offices now, spanning Virginia down into the Carolinas, down into Georgia, and we've got an office in Denver, just because that's fun.
All the way out in Denver.
All the way up there. And so we have our own territories, obviously, because we don't want to go outside the territory because it really doesn't serve our customers very well. And I can't actually, it's one thing to sell something. And you have that, we like to joke around about the tail light warranty where you sell it, you put it in, as long as you see the tail lights, it's covered. That we're not like that. We find out what the best solution is, and we're there to support it with the best possible service. So if we go far out of our territory, obviously it's difficult for us to live up to our own standards of excellence. So where I'm going with that one is that this, in the last 3 weeks, I've been reached out to by two people that have heard our social media type platform, not no Facebook or anything like that, but just the podcast. I had one customer that out of our turf, but he found our podcast because he's a water I'm gonna mess this up, sommelier.
Sommelier?
Yeah, that's
Sommelier?
it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. I can see it, but for some reason my tongue won't let me pronounce it properly. So he was trying to educate himself on his new profession in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. So he was doing some digging around online and found a few different podcasts. And this one's designed obviously for an hour-long radio show. So it's kind of cool because he doesn't look for anything on YouTube because he actually listens to the podcast. I like to call it Dashboard University while he's commuting to work, which is almost an hour. So it's like a perfect distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect show. So yeah, he actually reached out and I was out at his place, and we're going to be hopefully able to help him, even though he's out of our normal territory. But I do have a couple of other odd situations in that area, so
expanding your borders.
Yes, expanding the footprint here.
I like that.
Yeah, it was actually that was kind of a funny one because he had listened to the episodes, all the podcasts. Mm-hmm. Either he's got a great memory or he listened to them so many times that I'm out there testing and seeing how we can help him. And he knew, it was like he knew me so well that he was finishing my sentences with the words that I was about to say anyway. It was really bizarre. So, yeah, that really was kind of cool to know that we're getting way outside of the Richmond footprint. And then just yesterday, we got a couple of phone calls from a far away, where the heck was it? Oklahoma? I think it was Oklahoma.
That's very far away.
Yeah, that's about as far away as you can think about getting. And that customer out there just got a Connecticut and had questions and was having trouble reaching the actual dealer that they had just purchased it from.
Oh.
Because I guess out there everything is far away.
Yeah.
So they were running a little behind on returning the call. So she was trying to do some research online and find answers to her questions, and went through a bunch of YouTube videos and found the channel that we put together, and made it a point to actually track us down here and call off of YouTube, which is a little trickier to do.
Yeah.
And called us up and was very complimentary about all the information that's out there. So, she's like, I learned more off of that video that you did than any other thing that I found on the internet. So that was pretty flattering.
You're doing good out there.
Yeah, so our footprint is growing.
Awesome.
So, that was one of those. It's kind of nice. And we're really only 14 episodes in, so that's not that long.
Right. Yeah.
People are finding us. But we want to take care of all of our local customers here. The last episode that we had was we didn't finish it, and I decided to not turn it into a two-parter, but to kind of branch off and do a whole separate episode just off of what we couldn't get to. So last time, this will all make sense in a second, but we were talking about bottled water and how bottled water back in 1973 came up with these voluntary standards from the bottled water industry. Remember that?
Yeah, my memory's being jogged now about that. Yep.
So there's these voluntary standards out there that they kind of agree to abide to. And the bottled water industry, everybody thinks bottled water is the safe alternative. Mm-hmm. Well, it's regulated by the FDA, but the only thing that they're required to do is to list the ingredients and the nutritional value. So, pretty simple. Now, they do also do testing because, they have these voluntary standards that they want to meet, but they are not required to go to a certified laboratory to get the results.
Right.
So,
I remember this as well.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I like to say that this is kind of like the person that's about to sell their house. And if you've ever gone through buying or selling a house or refi, you know that if you have a well, you have to do a bacteria test on your well. And this is exactly one of those things. There's a conflict of interest. Imagine if you're about to buy a house from somebody that had a well, and they said, we got to test the well to make sure that it's clean of bacteria at this moment in time. And the seller said, oh, okay, I'll do that. And he just gives you a report that says no bacteria. You'd be, of course, a little skeptical, like, well, okay, you're trying to sell me a house, and shazam, you got no bacteria.
There's no way there's no bacteria in that water.
Well, and there's bacteria in about 20% of the wells, but what we hear is a lot of these folks, they just want to close the deal. They want this whole process to be over.
Right.
So they actually ask us, they're like, hey, can you just test the water? I'm going to go ahead and I'll just bring it in. And we're like, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to have a third party actually come in there, a neutral party come in and do the collection for conflict of interest reasons. I don't care if the deal gets thrown off the rails. I just need to know for sure, is there a probability of bacteria, and is somebody about to be exposed to something?
Right.
But these guys could, they go to the 7-Eleven and pick up a bottle of water and crack it and pour it into the sample bottle and say, there we go. You just don't know. Right. So that's why it's a little surprising to see that they don't require certified labs for bottled water. But that's the reality of the world that we live in. So this episode is around pretty much the bottles. I like to say this episode is going to be called BP, and I'm going to call it bottle problem for right now. But BP is actually the first couple of letters for some things that some people I'm sure have heard about. I'm sure a lot of people listening have heard of BPA. So,
Yes.
yeah.
We talked about this last week as well.
Yep. So this is all a quick rehash, and then we're going to do a deep dive into it for those that love to nerd out like we do. And so the bottles, they're made of plastic for the most part. If you're really fanatical and you want to make sure you get the best of the best, you're going to go for something like a glass bottle. But the cost goes up significantly if you try to buy cases of glass bottles versus the cheap stuff.
Your Perrier's and
Yes.
whatever the other glass bottle water is out there.
Yep. So the bottles, the big problem isn't the water. It's the doggone bottle itself.
Right.
So if anybody's ever noticed, and if you're sitting at home and you've got a bottle of drinking water somewhere, pick that thing up and look. And sometimes you got to look really, really carefully. There's an expiration date on each bottle of bottled water. Mm-hmm. And it's not because the water goes bad, because the reality is that water is millions of years old.
Right.
Being another 2 years old, it doesn't change the water at all. It's the bottle that changes. The bottle will leach into the water, and this is kind of a creepy true story. Back in 2015, before I really got on the rampage of just absolutely no plastic bottles are going to be anywhere around us, I ordered a pallet of. Actually, at that time, Connecticut was making bottled water up in, I think it was Pennsylvania at some facility. But for one thing, it was ridiculously expensive. It cost more to transport the water than the pallet of water actually cost.
Right.
So once I got this pallet, we're not in the business to try to push bottles. So we started, giving them out at like festivals and church events and things like that. Well, we had a whole crap ton of bottles. Right. So we still had a bunch left over. And I think the expiration date was like maybe 2 years. 1 to 2 years. So I had all these extra bottles. I probably had a half of a pallet. That's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
And we didn't do anything stupid like you'd see at the hardware store where they take them and they put them outside in the sun. That's just, if you see that, don't buy those.
Right.
But these bottles were completely full when I bought them, completely sealed, airtight. And I've still got some of them now, and they're like 3/4 full. Yeah. Makes me wonder, what happened? Mm-hmm. How did that water get out of there?
Right.
So the bottle itself was starting to, I guess, break down. Mm-hmm. I kind of just made a little joke about putting them in the sun. That accelerates the degradation of the plastic and causes that stuff to leach into the water, and that's kind of why they have the expiration date. So a lot of people are really surprised to even see an expiration date because they never even noticed them, and they micro print them in a lot of cases in real tiny letters. But yeah, you can't keep bottled water forever because of the container.
Right.
So a lot of the containers, and this is more like the history of some of the problems with bottles. The BP doesn't just stand for bottle problem. It actually in this particular episode, it's talking about the bisphenol. The bisphenol, if anybody wanted to look that up. So the bisphenols are like a chemical category that's very important in the manufacture of plastics. So it's also kind of it's one of the main blocks, but it's easy to change it without really changing it. So some people have probably heard of BPA. That was one of those things that way back, even in the 70s, it's been around for a while. So it's
Right.
been around over 50 years. And even back then, there was folks that were like, hey, maybe we should do some studies on this. And, of course, it was the 70s and the 80s, and nobody really cared.
Everyone was like, nah, that's for later us to worry about.
Yeah, well, funny about that, because I remember I was in high school growing up in the 80s.
Mm.
It was a whole different world. We didn't have
Right.
bottled water. You just didn't.
Right.
You weren't born. Ethan's a little younger than I am.
1999.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's nodding his head knowingly, but he really doesn't know what the 80s were like.
Yeah, no.
The 80s were, everybody listening knows that those were the best times ever. But I remember when bottled water was like first coming out, and I believe it was late 80s, the first time I'd ever really seen like bottled water. And people were like, well, that's silly. Why would you buy bottled water? It's right there coming out of the faucet.
Right.
And now, here we are 40 years later. You wouldn't think about drinking. Well, most people wouldn't think about drinking out of the faucet.
Right.
But yeah, that's so bottled water. Yeah, as far as I could remember back, it really didn't start even coming out until the late 80s. But they were using the plastics way back into the 70s, and there were a lot of health concerns. But nobody really had the ability or there wasn't a lot of studies back then. For one reason or another, it didn't get a lot of attention. And it didn't really get there was no attention, no traction, and it kind of got tabled. I'm actually going to fast forward here. We're going to run out of time pretty quickly with our first break. So let me tell you that when we come back from the break, don't go anywhere because it's going to get even more fascinating. We're going to talk about mice.
Mice.
Mice, yep.
Ooh.
But for right now, let's go ahead and take our commercial break. Don't go away. Come back for more of the Water Guy Show, and we look forward to talking to you in a second. All right, welcome back from the break. This is the Water Guy, and this is the Water Guy Show with Paul and
Ethan.
All righty, so we're into the middle of the BP, the bottle problem episode, and we're talking about BPA. Mm-hmm. So BPA is bad. There's just no way around it. Mm-hmm. And it's bad because BPA is bisphenol A. So the BP is short for bisphenol. And what we're going to find out is that you can take, kind of like we talked about PFAS in the previous episode.
Yes.
There's like over 12,000 family members of PFAS because all they do is just change one little thing on the chemical makeup of it.
Right.
And it's almost the same, but it's not. It's just a different name.
Right.
And the BPs are kind of the same. But BPA is actually one of the very first ones. But it's bad. And what they have found is that it leaches into water and food. So it's not just water bottles.
Nice.
Yeah. BPA is a hormone disruptor. And other bisphenols are also estrogenic. Mm-hmm. Wrap your head around that for a second.
Well,
Estrogen. So,
I mean,
that's something I don't think I really want to be messing with in my body.
yeah, I don't think I really need a lot of that either.
No. I think I'm good without it.
Yeah.
It impacts and has effects on reproduction. And I love this next part here. Altered mating. Like, I put quotes around that because altered mating. I wrote that down and I've stared at it quite a few times as we were doing our research, and I'm thinking, what exactly is altered mating? Mm-hmm. Is that like if we were to offer to take somebody to a movie and we take them to a silent movie, something they weren't expecting?
Right.
I don't really know. It's about as good as I can get on on a G version podcast. But yeah, so it alters your mating behavior as well as your maternal behavior. So it makes moms act weird.
Okay.
It's all making sense now. So it's in a nutshell. This is bad. It messes with the way you act.
Right.
With having and raising children, as well as messing with your prostate and your fertility. All things that you probably don't want messed with without your knowledge.
Of course.
It also, the BPs, the family, the general family, also impacts brain development and can cause hyperactivity.
Huh.
The aha. We're all thinking of all the people that we've known throughout our lives right now going, I wonder.
Me. I'm the person that I'm thinking about throughout all my life.
Ethan's looking in the mirror right now.
Uh-huh.
That's what it is. So
It's the water.
it's the water. This whole time I've been poisoning myself. And BPA specifically was studied and is shown to depress the immune system. Not depress like make it sad, like depress like it's going to make it not work.
Not function correctly. Right.
A weak immune system, which, everything that's gone on in the world in the last few years, you don't really want a weakened immune system.
What?
That's crazy. But you're probably sitting here going, "Oh, this stuff is horrific. Where is it?" Well, let me tell you. Water bottles, toys, canned food linings. That was one that caught me by surprise way back when I learned about it. And one completely unrelated, cash register receipts. So as much as you might be tempted, do not put cash register receipts in your mouth.
That's my favorite hobby, man. You can't do this to me.
The crunch is irresistible.
The crunchiness, like the texture of the paper and everything.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
So the water bottles and the toys, I kind of get it because a lot of the toys are made out of plastic and they're going to use whatever they can to make some stupid object that keeps somebody pacified for a little while. But the canned food, so that was one that kind of caught me. I always thought that canned food was just a metal can that had food in it and it was canned.
Right. But I don't know if you've seen this. There is a video going around about someone putting a can of Coke in this chemical concoction that breaks down the aluminum in the can, and it leaves behind that rubber lining. Not rubber, but that plastic lining.
It eats the metal, leaves the lining?
Yep. Yeah. So it literally just turns into like
just the skin.
The little top part of the aluminum that didn't get dissolved because it was outside of the liquid. And then just this flimsy sack of plastic with Coca-Cola in it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So canned food lining. So ever since then, I've been trying to I've been trying to look for things that say BPA free because I heard about this a while ago.
Right.
And I'm always looking I try to not eat canned foods now. But when I do. Like, I just had something. What the heck did I eat the other night? There was something I opened up. It was like a can of, like, black beans or something. And I could see when I looked down in there, I rinse it and I throw it in the recycle bin. And I looked down in the can and you could just see there was it wasn't metal. It was just like this plastic coating. And I'm like, great. I'm going to end up poisoning myself.
And putting BPA in my beans.
Yes. Beans and BPA. But like I said before, they've known about all this weird stuff since the 70s, but there haven't been any good studies. So a while ago, actually, the year of the mouse study was, I think that was back in like 2003, as a matter of fact. So they do a lot of research with mice, and they breed these mice under very strict laboratory conditions so that they can have, very reliable genetic strains of mice so that when they test things on them, they have a good representation of what kind of impact it makes. So they found that these mice were having genetic damage when they were trying to breed them. And for those of you that never really been around a laboratory type environment with mice, they keep them in these like gigantic plastic shoe boxes, for the most part, with a cage,
Right.
like a cage in the top with a water bottle dropped down in there, and they, toss their special mouse food in there, and they drink out of the water bottle, but they're living in a plastic box. So over time, well, basically the first ones were actually leaching enough BPA into the mouse environment that it was starting to mess up their genetics. So they're like, oh, well, that's not good. So they switched over, and some of the damage was low sperm count and miscarriages. So we're not talking about just ugly mice. We're talking about messed up.
Right.
Like they weren't reproducing like they're supposed to. So they were like, oh, man, we need to do something about this. So they switched over to these other cages that were I think they were BPA free. Yeah, they were BPA free. I had a little note on that. Well, BPA free, and they used diphenyl sulfone. I probably butchered that one. But so they got these new cages. And at first, everything was great.
Right.
But they have to clean these things a lot.
Right.
So they started having, after a few generations, they started having some more genetic problems. And they're like, well, how is this possible? We got rid of the BPA.
Yeah.
Well, the new version of BPA was a little more resistant to just leaching out in the environment so quickly. But the cages being washed, it actually like caused this stuff to start coming out of the plastics. So they had this whole problem all over again, but for different reasons.
Right.
So I guess the moral of that one, well, it kind of goes along with the next thing I was going to say here. So a lot of folks are like, well, how the heck do I protect myself? And you can say no to plastics that have, that little triangle recycle imprint on it.
This one has the triangle with a 1 in the center.
Oh, no, it does?
It does, and it says peat on the bottom. I don't know the significance of peat. But...
So it's not 100% going to indicate what's in that bottle, but basically the rules are, if you have plastic that has a 1, a 3, a 6, or a 7, that's bad.
Well,
That is, I don't want to get in legal trouble. That's potentially not good.
there's a possibility that it could lead to not good things.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
You're holding the number 1, so
I'm holding number 1.
number 1's on the no list.
Darn.
Um,
Not Deer Park.
I didn't say it. He did. So, yeah, the attorneys don't come after me. So, things to say yes to, or at this point in time, the ones that are believed to be the safer alternatives have that little icon of the little triangle with a 2, a 4, and a 5. So, I'm trying to come up with a nice little memory aid to help you remember yes to 2, 4, 5. I can't think of anything. By the end of the show, we might think of something.
Yeah.
But 1367 is no. That might be easier to remember.
1367 is a no.
1367 is no. Back in 1367. When my dad was born. That's terrible. I was just on the phone with him last night. He's going to kill me. So anyway, so that's how to protect yourself is to basically try to avoid 1, 3, 6, and 7 and try to go more towards a 2, 4, and a 5. And this other one caught me by surprise. Don't dishwash or microwave them. And at first I was like, oh, well, my intuitive thinking was like, oh, well, yeah, you want to go ahead and wash it right away to try to remove any of the stuff that might be hanging around on the surface. But it's not just what's on the surface. It's what you're gonna expose beneath the surface.
Right.
So microwaving and dishwashing are very rough on plastics. So try to not use the dishwasher or the microwave with plastics, which is really weird because growing up, I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, I remember my mom was always like, you shouldn't microwave plastic. One day they're going to find out that it's bad. Here we are.
Shocker.
Yeah.
They found out it's bad.
She was prophetic.
What if the plastic says microwave safe
Yes,
on it, Paul?
Trust them. Yeah, trust them. You can trust the manufacturer. They have your best interest. But the best alternative is to use glass or like a stainless steel container. That's really the safe way. Just eliminate the plastic stuff. If it's going to touch anything that you're going to eat or drink, just try to go glass or steel.
But don't microwave the steel.
Yeah, I remember being a kid and I microwaved those old-fashioned bread ties that had the wire and the paper on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was always exciting.
It creates your own little fireworks show in your home.
Yes. That's awful. So there's a little history. So I know that you love the history part of all this.
I do.
All right. So first we started off with the whole BPA because that was one of the founders of the problem.
Yes.
And we talked about where it's found. We talked about the brain development and all the other bad things that it causes. The CDC back in 2003 and 4 did a study, and they found 93% of the people that were tested positive for BPA. 93%.
And when was this?
This was 2003 and 04.
Wow.
This was, we're talking 20 years ago, and they knew that we had a lot of exposure to this. And no matter where you go, you're going to find numbers over 90% on any testing.
Right.
And the thing that's bizarre about it is that the human body breaks down and excretes the bisphenols within a few days. So if you're testing positive, that means that you are under constant exposure.
Mm.
Yeah. So because the theory is that, if you were to be bisphenol free in your environment for, let's say, a week,
mm-hmm.
you wouldn't test positive.
Right.
So if 93% of people are showing it, that means that pretty much we're all being exposed to this stuff.
Just perpetually.
So, and this is why I was so excited to get this information out there. Because if I can help somebody avoid something terrible health-wise, then everything that we do is definitely worth it.
Of course.
So, and there's some places out there that actually recognize that this stuff is scary. For example, Washington State has designated BPA, BPS, which we'll talk about after the break, and BPF, as in Frank, as, quote, chemicals of high concern for children. So they've identified it. That's the first time I've seen something that didn't say the state of California. Yeah, this was Washington State. So somebody else other than California, because they've just screamed it from the mountain so much that I don't think anybody even pays attention to that anymore.
They've hit the ban hammer on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So BPA is bad. And in 2008, there was so much public pressure that the FDA finally banned BPA in baby bottles and sippy cups. And there's more to these regulations. Really, so that was the beginning of it. And it's kind of messed up because 2008 they banned baby bottles and sippy cups, but in 2012 they also banned infant formula packaging. So they're like, well, babies might touch this too. So it apparently is really bad on children.
Yeah.
Developing, and specifically, under 3-year-old children.
Right.
But we're going to dig deep into that after the break here. But make sure you're writing down the phone number, 877-60-WATER. That's 877-609-2837. That's our phone number over in the office. Eastern Time, 9:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. You can reach us, and you can go to our website and do a whole bunch of self-research. We have a great website that does not dig deep into being all salesy. It's more information. You can do your own research, find out what you need, and we are here to help with the next steps with that. But Connecticut Richmond is the website. It's also the YouTube channel and Water Guy podcast.
To say, if they want a little bit more information, they can listen back to all the previous videos.
Yes. Yep. We are.
Episodes.
We'll have, 13 or maybe 14 here by Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Uploaded and on all different platforms. So don't go away. Come right back. We're going to take a break. Alrighty, welcome back to the final segment of Water Guy, and this is Paul.
And this is Ethan.
we are keeping it conversational and educational today.
He's making me do my own intros now, though. He's not introducing me anymore.
I know. Maybe I'm just slacking, or maybe we're just getting better.
I'm giving me too much responsibility.
So today we're talking about, if you just tuned in, we're talking about the water bottles, and more specifically, it's more than the water bottles. It's BPA, the bisphenols that are out there, not just in water bottles, but in canned food. They used to be in infant formula packaging up until 2012, when the FDA finally decided to ban it under public pressure. That's very important that I say that, because. So the FDA has a department, I guess. I don't really understand the complete relationship, but it falls under the FDA. It's called the NCTR, the National Center for Toxicological Research. I'm glad I got that out without screwing it up. So they were quick during the bans back in 2008 and 2012 to say, no effects of BPA from low-dose exposure. So that's the FDA. That's supposed to be, the advocate for us. We're supposed to be able to trust them to guide our health and make sure that we're not making some dumb decisions, kind of like eating fast food every single day, 3 meals a day. Now, obviously, there's freedom in this country, which is wonderful, but there's also big business that tends to lead sometimes in a direction that isn't really in everybody's long-term best interest.
That's a conversation for another time.
Yep, that's like an AM talk show.
That's some NPR stuff.
NPR.
Oh yeah.
Well, worse than NPR. Yeah, it's the ones talking about NPR. So now they had BPA, and then they were like, okay, BPA, we're going to ban it, even though we're saying there's nothing really wrong with it. And so the chemists were like, woohoo, let's go out and make some more stuff. Let's figure out a solution, because the world is better with chemistry. I think that was, I don't remember the exact company. I don't want to misspeak on that, but that was back in the 50s or the 60s, where they were like, the better world through chemistry.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a quote. It was an actual marketing slogan. And so now they have created BPS, which is bisphenol S, BPF, which it'll all make sense in a second here. BPF, BPAF, BPZ, BPP, BHPF, and it goes on and on. You kind of get the idea.
Why are you saying the alphabet out of order?
Yeah, I know. I don't know why they gave them in that order. Maybe it was the order they were made. I'm assuming BPZ is made way after BPA.
Yeah.
But there's a whole litany of these things.
Yeah.
And another added in diphenyl sulfone. Not cell phone, but sulfone.
Sulfone.
So that just, all that means is that there's a whole crap load of these things out there. And I think I could say crap load on the radio. Yeah.
That's fine.
Sure.
FCC approves.
That's good. That's a good word. It's better than the alternative.
True.
So we got all these new players in this in the arena of plastics. And it's kind of funny that the U.S. was, way behind the time. You got to remember, this is 2012 by the time they were like, all right, let's start protecting our kids. That's a little over 10 years ago.
Right. That's not that long ago.
Not that long ago. So the EU, the European Union, over there, way back in 97, they had already realized this was no bueno. This is not some good stuff. So they made an actual restriction of BPA and BPS, which is that's the most common alternative to BPA. And they made a full restriction in 97 for plastic and epoxy coatings that were in food contact materials. That's about as clear as I could get on that rule that came out. But still, that was over 25 years ago. So they were way ahead of us.
Yeah.
And in 1999, Prince was talking about Purple Rain, and they were over there saying, okay, now you can't use BPA and BPS in toys, child care articles, and sportswear. So, party like it's 1999, and let's go ahead and protect people. So, a few years after that, then they said, all right, let's go ahead and ban those in plastic kitchenware and the inner coatings for food and beverage cans. So, by 2002, they were already pretty much, it was pretty much banned in stuff that took another 10 years over here in the U.S. So I got to say that, I didn't realize that Europe was that far ahead of us in terms of, digging into the potential dangers.
Right.
And then in 2020, they completely banned for any purpose brominated BPA. Now, a chemist that's listening to this will probably understand the difference between regular BPA and brominated BPA. I can't really go into the differences enough to sound intelligent. So let's just say that brominated BPA is really bad, and it got banned in the European Union. And then over here in the U.S., so we talked about the FDA before. So now the CDC is where I started to get some input. This is where they finally say, BPA is, quote, a chemical of concern. So the CDC is weighing in now on this stuff, going, maybe we need to dig deeper onto this, because Europe is basically shutting it all off back before the turn of the millennium here. And in 2000, they did some studies, 2013 through 2016, and they found specifically that there was a positive correlation between urinary BPS, basically the amount of BPS that's still showing up in your urine, and coronary heart disease risk. So now they're linking it to heart disease. Great. Yet another thing. Like it wasn't bad enough already.
Right.
And the way that really works is it disrupts the calcium flow inside the heart cells, which sabotages the heart's force. So it makes your heart weak, putting it in layman's terms here. And that was a study. I'll go ahead and give him kudos on this one. Glenn Pyle. He was a professor at the University of Guelph in Canada.
Canada.
Canada. But he weighed in and found that, yep, it's even bad on your heart. So we talked about BPS a couple of times. Yes. So BPS was really the main replacement for BPA. Now that everybody's like, ooh, BPA is bad, and now we really officially are we're making that stand. So there's a lot of BPS out there in all sorts of food contact things that we run into. There was a study done, and there were people studied. It was a study that took people in the U.S. and Asia. It didn't get any more specific where in Asia, but 81% of the people sampled in this study tested positive for BPS. So the new replacement that's supposed to be safer and not leach into everything is obviously leaching into everything. So kind of crazy. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, is BPA and BPS the exact same thing? Well, according to the National Library of Medicine, bisphenol S causes hormonal and obesogenic effects. Take that in. Hormonal.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, well,
doesn't it?
I'm married, and that's usually the cause of many fights. So something to do with hormones, but so I know that that's not an ideal situation to be messing with hormones.
Of course.
And the next one, I am definitely not a qualified physician or anything like that, but obesogenic.
Doesn't sound good.
Well, I can tell you that obese. I know what obese means.
I do also.
Yeah. So obesogenic, meaning your genes, you're basically transforming your body to be obese.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm interpreting this. So it's bad. So you're going to be putting weight on,
Right.
and you're going to have hormone problems. And now, of course, this has been correlated with gestational diabetes. So, what'd you find?
No, yeah, trending to cause obesity.
Oh,
Yeah.
sometimes I scare myself. So the next one, I'm gonna make an assumption what that one means too. So gestational diabetes. Now, to me, that makes it sound like the baby may be born diabetic, because when you're in a gestation, there's a baby involved.
Right.
I doubt that the mother would be turning diabetic.
Right.
So gestational, and Ethan's gonna go ahead and fact check this one so that if you're listening right now,
It's on the top. Yep. Diabetes during pregnancy.
Is it the child or is it the mother? It's probably not well, it could be the father, because a lot of times dads just sit there and eat while the baby's being brewed.
It is the mother, actually.
Really?
Yeah, they develop effects. What happens when you have gestational diabetes? Having gestational diabetes can increase your risk of high blood pressure during pregnancy. It can also increase your risk of having a large baby that needs to be delivered by C-section.
Oh,
Ouch. So
it's not the baby, it's the mom.
it is the mom,
Mm.
but it's still probably not good for the baby anyways.
Yeah, I stand corrected, but that's terrible. And BPS is more toxic to the reproductive system than BPA. So it's worse for all those crazy things that like altered mating and maternal behavior and things like that. Wonderful. It does. I'll try to put a little positive light on this. Yeah. It seems like the rate of certain breast cancers is not worse than BPA. It's the same.
All right.
So it's not worse on cancer, but it still causes it. So that is terrible. You don't want BPS either. I guess that's where I'm going with all this.
Yeah.
And either way, all the bisphenols, your body does break them down. It's kind of like, if you're taking a prescription, you got to take it constantly because your body is processing it and getting rid of it.
Right.
But we're constantly dosing ourselves with this stuff. So, yeah. That is that's what I have to say about the BPS and the BPA thing. I want everybody that's listening to kind of just be a little bit more aware of we started this show talking about water, and now it's talking about more water and how water leads to other things, like I'm going to drink from a water bottle because that's healthier, and you're actually exposing yourself to worse things than if you just drink tap water in some cases. Now, don't get me wrong. I would rather have a splitting headache from dehydration than drink tap water. But I will not drink from a bottle, a plastic bottle, especially after this episode. This is one of those that just scares the heck out of me.
Right.
So, yes, we gotta make some better choices out there. And I was talking about all this and tap water. I'm trying to think how I can tell this story without I'm going to tell the story about something that just happened within the last few weeks. So there's a, you give me the thumbs up?
Getting excited.
All right, yes.
I'm ready to hear another story.
All right, so I was down, and I'm going to keep this and don't ask for any fact check proof because I will not divulge any of it. Just trust me, it's all true. We did a project down at a local municipality. All I'll say is that it was in our territory somewhere, and I have a very large territory.
A very broad region.
So they have this really cool machine that takes table salt, and it basically extracts the chlorine from it and uses the chlorine to chlorinate the water that it uses for the tap water. And if anybody's listening to this going, oh, I've already heard of something like that, it's because a lot of saltwater pools do the same thing. They'll take the chloride from the sodium chloride that you throw in the pool, and it will actually extract the chlorine and use that to keep your pool sanitized.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's actually a pretty cool system.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular municipality has had this thing going for, I don't know how many decades at this point.
Right.
But they're providing water to all of their people that are on their plan. And they have to test this stuff several times a day.
Right.
For certain contaminants. And I remember there was this one, I won't even tell you which contaminant it was. But basically, they called me back down there because they were having some questions about the equipment. And I was like, oh, well, let's test for this. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, well, we got the tester up here in the facility. So I followed him up in there, and he's starting to test. And I'm noticing, because we use some very expensive stuff, I'm noticing that it's the same brand. And I'm like, well, he's got a much more expensive machine there. I wonder how close his method is to my method. And I see him pulling out literally the exact same, they weren't the same shape, but they were the same type of vial, same type of powders and things like that.
Right.
Long story short, this guy had been testing for 2 years, and I'm watching him, and he's logging everything on his sheet. Like, he's got a detailed record. And I realized halfway through that he was testing incorrectly. Like, really bad. Like, he was completely blowing the first part of it where you have to kind of zero the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So he was missing that part. And I told him, I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, but that's not how this is supposed to be tested. So I'm down there testing and basically giving them a tutorial on how to test water after they've been doing it themselves for so many years. But that made me go, holy cow. Everybody getting water from this place. Who knows what they've been drinking for the last few years. But yeah, that was just one of those stories that don't just trust your tap water.
Yeah.
Because they may be doing everything that, they're not doing anything on purpose bad, but maybe they just don't know any better. Like, that was exactly the case there. So,
right.
Well, I hope this episode was educational, informative, and we'll have a lot of folks giving us a call because we have drinking water systems that will protect you from BPAs and things like that. And we have a really cool stainless steel flask that's a 40 ounce, I believe it is. Holds 40 ounces of water, and it's custom engraved. Everybody that gets a K5 drinking water system gets one of those. But, yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. 877-60-WATER. That's Connecticut, Richmond. And the team is around pretty much all the time. We've got chat online. We've got you can fill it out at 3 a.m. and send it in, and we'll call you when we open the office up. But we promise we'll get you taken care of, and we'll continue to earn our perfect score on our Google reviews. And tune in next time for the next Water Guy Show.
You've been listening to the Connecticut Water Guy Hour. Join us next week for another edition with Paul, your Connecticut Water Guy. Opinions expressed on the program may not necessarily reflect the views of station management and ownership. Portions been recorded.